Okay, thanks. Welcome. Today, our call September 18, 2025. I'm Alfredo from the Zcash Foundation, more specifically from the Zebra team. Uh, on the agenda for today, I will have a lot of updates. We can start with Zebra, then the ECC, say no, Zcash deprecation, then Kedit and shielded apps in NSM and cross-link with ECC. Finally, for the discussion, we have one topic uh, that I think is cross-link tokenomics. So if you're interested in that, you have to wait until the end. Uh, what are the Arborist calls? Bi-weekly calls where Zcash protocol contributors convene to discuss, timelines and process, and we try to agree on different development things we're working on. Anyone can participate. You can go to zcasharborist.org for more information, the ways to get involved. You can post the video there and check those links out. Okay, so let's get started with the real content. For Zebra update, that's myself. So in the last 2 weeks or so, we finished with get route transaction, which had missing the orchard fields. So we finished that. That was Conrado that did most of that work. Then we, in the get address transaction IDs RPC method, we were supporting an object argument, which was the most complex thing to do, but there is a single option for the arguments. It's just string, and we just added that in the last 2 weeks. It was from an external contributor called Ciceri that has done a bunch of stuff in the last 2 weeks with us. Yeah, we are very grateful for seeing that kind of contribution. The same person also worked with Conrado in adding the get mempool info RPC method, which is one of the RPC methods we had missing for Zcash deprecation. Then the same contributor improved error propagation to one of our types, which we had pending since a while, and now it's done, which is a good refactor. We had a lot of smaller contributors that helped us fixing specific tests. I was working on improving the Python test framework in regards to the argument passing to the binaries. And with that, we were able to add a feature, a new 6.1 test to test the disbursement, which went pretty much okay. Aria added the C future variant to network upgrade, which is something several teams were requesting to us so they can develop their own stuff for future network upgrade. Now Zebra supports that. We removed a lot of custom code from Sapling. We moved to use the Sapling crypto crate upstream. Removed a lot of code. We weren't able to remove it all, but we got rid of a bunch of it, avoiding duplication. We updated contributor guidelines. So if you're a contributor, please take a look. We added 2 new items, I think. And then a big chunk of work we did is, Aria mainly did, is to back up the last 100 blocks from Zebra. So the non-finalized chain, when you restart Zebra, those blocks were lost and they had to be downloaded from the network again. Now we are saving those blocks to files. And when you restart Zebra, you start in the exact point that you were before you shut it down. That we added a Python test for that as well, as long as Rust test. So we think we have the feature pretty much covered, but if you can give it a try, it would be great if you find bugs. And then there was a lot of CI refactor work that Gustavo is working on. And the Zebra CI is a lot simpler now, and it's a lot more stable. So the PRs are getting merged faster, which has increased a lot the productivity of the overall Zebra team. Also, Marek is back with us. He was in a sort of vacation and professional development. went to some conference around the world, as far as I know. Now he's back working with us, and we expect to have more stuff done. So for the future, now that Mark is back, we have PR for SIP 213, which is about supporting shielded addresses in the Coinbase transaction for the miners. We expect to resume the work on there. We have PR since a while to add flight client support to Zebra. And we think that these functionalities may be better for Zeno. So we have to discuss if we move the functionality there. I guess that could be a good topic for discussion as well. And that's related to the guidelines. I mentioned it before. One of the things we added to the guidelines is that if the functionality belongs to Zeno or Salad or anything like that, we will try to move it to the corresponding repositories instead of adding more functionality to Zebra, trying to achieve the old dream of just be a node consensus software. But yeah, at least we are not going to be adding new functionality if it can be added to somewhere else and belongs there. Yeah, then we have an external contributor working on Get Network Info, which is another RPC method we want to support for security deprecation. Conrado is working on Get Route Transaction sidechains functionality that we don't have. And we have a few open PRs about the health endpoints, which is a mix of work between Kerit, Gustavo, Emerson, I think, other people that are requesting to have that functionality, so different ways to do it, and we're trying to agree in one of them. And I guess that's pretty much it for Zebra. Any question? Okay, let's move to the ECC.
All right. So the major efforts. So major announcement for this morning is that the Zale alpha is out. I will post in the chat the URL for the documentation. But you can get that at zcash.github.io/wallet. And there are both Docker images available under the Electric Coin Code Docker Hub and Debian packages available for the Zale Alpha. The second major effort has been to get the Zashi CrossPay functionality out. So you now from your Zashi wallet can make cross-chain payments via Near. And we are also getting quite close to the reverse swaps into Zashi from arbitrary coins facilitated by Zashi. I did my first one yesterday and it was awesome. I just, opened my MetaMask wallet and scanned a QR code and swapped directly from ETH into ZEC. So that was pretty cool. So that's nearing completion. The next major thing, the other thing that has been completed recently is we've made a bunch of progress on the Rust implementation of the Zcash script interpreter. That code is actually getting to be really pretty nice at this point. There are 2 more PRs that we are working hard to get merged with the goal of getting the last of the Zcash script functionality that we need into the wallets for the purpose of doing key generation for the mainnet NU 6.1 release. Which is the next major effort on our plate. Strad, is there anything that I'm missing there?
No, I think that about covers it. Main thing I'll point out for the alpha is, as it says on the front page of the documentation, expect things to break as changes are made. We are not currently at a point where you won't need to recreate your Zale wallet from scratch. So as a result, expect to go in and hit a bunch of edge cases when you're using it. Please tell us about those edge cases so that we can improve them.
Yep. The other important note there is that this is not, the alpha that we have released is essentially a minimum viable set of functionality, but it does represent most of the functionality that we hope that users will be able to migrate to. There is a page on that documentation site that describes the differences from the Zcash RPC API. There are a number of RPC methods that we are opting not to support for now because we believe that the replacements are better than what was originally available and have fewer corner cases. But if there are RPC methods that you really, really need that are not currently supported, please talk to us and let us know why it is that you're not possible to migrate to the new and improved RPC APIs.
Oh, there
That I
was
think
a
is
massive contribution from you guys. Huge amount of pull requests into the Salad repository in the last 2 weeks for the alpha. Any question for the ECC? Okay, let's move on to single labs. Do we have anyone?
Hey, yeah, Zah here. We have been working on supporting the Zale release. We have a Git transaction status and Git snapshot methods in flight. Some of those are waiting for review, should land shortly. We consistent with the ZF guidelines to use the best implementations across the Z3 space. We are deprecating some bespoke deserialization we had in Zyno. We are deprecating a local cache we had in Zyno that is coupled to the bespoke deserialization. Those we expect to land this week. We have been migrating to the Git snapshots API that Hazel implemented. And we recently completed disentangling a bunch of dependency snarls that allowed us to upgrade to network upgrade 6.1, which has had some positive side effects on Zyno. We've scoped all of our work in a GitHub project that we targeted to be complete by next Friday, and I think it's safe to say we're on target.
Cool, thank you, sir. Any question for single labs? Okay, let's move on to Zcash deprecation update. I'm not sure if Paco is here. I think it's not. Well, a lot of stuff in the Salad saying on Zebra is in this front right now. So I think it's pretty much covered. I don't have any specific update to say here, but if anybody has something, please speak now or we move on. Okay, let's move on. We have people from Katie. Please go ahead.
Hi guys, can I share my screen for this?
Yeah, let me stop sharing mine. Okay.
Okay, so we continue to develop ZSA across multiple crates. We had a meeting today with ECC, Strat from ECC. We showed them our initial implementation for Zcash versioning, and we got his feedback. So Zcash versioning is additional byte that currently attached to Zcash, and the idea that in the future we can potentially change the Zcash algorithm to a different algorithm without changing the transaction format. So we are adding a version to the Zcash. And this is applicable to Orchard. In the future, currently we Orchard ZSA, but in the future for swaps, we will need a different Zcash algorithm that will hash every action group independently instead of hashing the entire transaction as it is done today. So this is the preparation for the future. But but the zip editors decided to do this not only for Orchard, but also for sapling and transparent. So we discussed, since we are already doing this for Orchard ZSA, it makes sense that we will do this change for sapling and for transparent as well. We discussed the best way to achieve this across the crates, and we decided together to move a lot of this logic closer to the transaction encoder decoder in Libra Zcash, having some mutual logic here. And of course, we need to change each one of these to support the Zcash versioning. This is one thing. We continue with the changes propagation. So there were zip changes that started in Orchard ZSA, but they need to be propagated up in the stack. So we are propagating them into Libra Zcash and Zebra. Libra Zcash, it's not one crate, it's multiple crates. So this is in progress. We also discussed the Orchard ZSA review. So the Orchard ZSA review is a big piece of work. In order for this to happen, first of all, the zips related to Orchard ZSA need to be frozen. Basically, no more changes. Okay, we say, like as a community, we say that we reached to a point where we included every feature that we planned into these zips, and to say freeze. Of course, we can do bug fixes if we see that the implementation requires it. Bug fixes can be made, but generally speaking, we cannot review Orchard ZSA if the zips are being changed under our feed. So we have this. At the same time, other work for Orchard, at least for the review period, it is recommended to stop other changes in Orchard that are not related to Orchard ZSA. And when we have these two, we will do with the ECC team back and forward as much as needed to enable this review. We are fully available for this. We're just waiting for the mark. So this is on the subject of Orchard ZSA review. Next, we are also working on integration. So we discussed with Strat this week what is the right point in upstream for Libra Zcash that already include the NSM changes. So we can embed the NSM changes into the transaction v6 format. Basically, most of the transaction v6 format are ZSA related, so we have a working version of this. But for sake of integration, we're also embedding the NSM fields. So we discussed the upstream PRs in Libra Zcash that we need to catch up first in order to do this integration. So this is happening as well. Next, we started a mini working group. Chris started it, and Alfredo. This is around wallets. So the idea that currently we have a bi-weekly meeting with Chris, Alfredo, Arya, Alexei from our team, and myself to discuss how we can promote. From our side, we are helping with ZSA features into the wallet. So even Zcash backend client is a crate under Libra Zcash. So even before we submitting the Libra Zcash changes for ZSA, we are already in discussions how this will look on the wallet side. So we are advising on wallets and also on fees. There are changes. There are changes in ZIP 317 for NU7 to support ZSA. So the issue bundle, for example, need to be taken into account. So all of us working together to promote the wallet integration of the ZSA side. Alfredo and Arya already started the work and submitted. We are looking into this. We saw the message. So we have this. And also we're working on Zebra, the ZSA version. So we had a discussion this week with Zcash Foundation. We suggested the health endpoint. Today, when we copied our work to upstream independently, we discovered that there were some upstream changes been done that we cannot copy the health point as is, as we presented yesterday, because one of the crates was replaced with a fork. So we work around this. We will prepare a new version and we will submit it as discussed. Also, a lot of happening in Zebra, and we see it as a consumer basically. So we have our own fork of Zebra. So some of the effort that we are doing is to catch up with upstream. So we are in the process of updating the latest Zebra work into our branch in order for us to continue the development. And the overall task for Zebra, the overall challenge is to add state management and the consensus rules. Consensus rules are dependent on state management. Once we have state management figured out, we will lay out all the consensus rules that are written pretty clearly in the zips. So we have this. This is our update.
Cool. Any question for Kedit? Okay, I try to share my screen again. Okay, let's move on to Sheeted Labs, NSM.
Marius, do you want to start off?
Yes, sure. Hi. So regarding NSM, so we are, I think, waiting for the Zcash test vector PR101 to be merged. I think all the comments are addressed now, and the PR was also rebased recently. As for the zip 233 Zebra PR, I've rebased it recently after the latest changes done to the Libra Zcash, so that I could get rid of those patches for Libra Zcash. I saw the problem is with the CI, with the automated tests. There is one test that uses all features flag, and that test is failing because we are missing the NU7 Zcash unstable flag that is passed to the Libra Zcash. So when the all features flag is enabled, we are using the takes version 6 flag also then, and that flag actually requires the Libra Zcash to be compiled with the NU7 Zcash unstable flag.
So what change are needed in Libra Zcash or in Zebra?
No changes needed. Actually, the thing is that to be able to use the NU7 in Zebra, you have to compile Libra Zcash with the Zcash unstable flag.
Yeah.
NU7. And in the automated test, this Zcash unstable flag is not set for the Libra Zcash. So that test is not passing.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not sure what we want to do if we want to pass it in the test using that.
What we do is we have separate test tasks in CI that enable the Zcash unstable, the various Zcash unstable flags to ensure that that we build with any of them. So just separate. So we don't necessarily always run tests, I think, with the Zcash unstable flags. We do run builds.
Yeah. And we generally, at least initially, we generally have that logic set to allow those to fail, and the PR can still be merged, so it's not blocking on the PR because those are still in flux. Like in Zale, for instance, right now our NU7 test build doesn't pass because we're built on a version of Zebra that couldn't build with NU7.
Okay, let's see how we can go over that. either by ignoring the test or by have different CI runs or something like that. I'll take an action here to start an issue in Zebra for this so we can discuss further. Anything else for NSM?
It's everything from my side.
Yeah, I guess
Okay,
one
cool.
question that I have is we haven't really started to rebase or try to integrate zips 234 and 235. And now it sounds like we're pretty close to getting 233 merged or merged to main. At what point should we start working on those other two zips? From the Zcash Foundation's perspective, like, is it too early to do it now?
I am not sure. I'm not sure if Ari is here. I think he has more context.
Chris, do you have any insight into that?
Can't hear you.
You're
You're
muted,
muted,
Chris.
Oh,
Chris.
I was going to say, I don't have a strong idea right now. As Arya is probably the right one to answer this, but yeah, I have not been thinking about the NSM much in the last couple of weeks. So
Okay, that's fine.
if there are Libra Zcash PRs that need to be made and rebased, I think that the
There-
only things
There
that
are only Zebra PRs.
yeah, no,
I
yeah, I'm not tracking there. I'm just contemplating what might be useful, or like what the only, yeah, I can't think of anything that that would still affect Libra Zcash at this point, except for potentially I don't know how the transaction construction for Coinbase outputs. Right now, Marek has an open PR for that I think has some comments on it that need to be addressed. But beyond that, for the changes in fee distribution, there will probably need to be some changes to how Zcash client backend's transaction builder is used, but I don't know if that requires additional changes to the builder right now.
Nate?
Yeah, this is a slight tangent, but because I haven't been paying attention to the NSM directly either. But over in Crosslink land, we are starting to mess around with transaction types, and the so there's Zebra has some of its own types, and then Libra Zcash has some types, and there's like overlap in scope. And I know that there's plans to change some of that, specifically like the transaction type that's in each code base. And I was wondering if we could have like a roadmap meeting focused just on that issue of overlapping scope between Libra, Zcash, and Zebra, just so that I mean, the timing for us would be nice before we really get into the thick of it, if we know about any big structural changes coming up.
Yeah, that's correct. In the Zebra, we want to change the transaction to use the one in Libra Zcash, but we kind of had been requested by Kedit to do that after their code is merged in, because they are constantly have to make changes if we do that. So I think the transaction structure we have in Zebra will stay there until then. And then the idea is to switch to the one in Libra Zcash, but yeah, not for
So
now, I suppose. Go ahead.
for so again, Crosslink in this prototype phase, we aren't too worried about merging with upstream code bases, but if there's already, like, I'm wondering if we want a development branch or something that all of the teams are aware of and looking at, that's for after ZSA's land. Like for post NU7, we know we want to make this big pivot. Should we
Right.
start working on that now? Otherwise, for Crosslink, we can, right now in the prototype phase, we're not worried about throwing out our code, so we could just messily hack whatever we want together. But by the time we want to start preparing for the actual production code, it would be nice to like sort of dovetail our efforts there if we can.
Yeah.
But again, the timing for that could be next year. It's not urgent. It's just I wanted to talk about it earlier.
Yeah. So right, what we kind of move it to the future, and we're not kind of planning on that, but we could kind of, we know it's going to happen. We're not sure when, but at least we want it to happen. So the same happened with you. So in the last few weeks, I was working with Conrado in a big refactor to Zebra for the sapling code. We have all code duplicated. We could use sapling crypto to do pretty much the same. And the same happens with Orchard. And we are not doing that now, at least because of the same reason. Like the Keddy team has a lot of code. We would like it to keep it like that for now. But yeah, we can definitely talk about it. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, okay. I mean, we could talk more about it. Would it help to have like a roadmap planning discussion across orgs for this topic, even though it's early? Like, you know, if we plan on starting those efforts next year, it might be good.
Yeah, I think so. I think we can bring other topics that are related to that. Like, for example, I mentioned in the Zebra update that we have here for the fly client functionality. And we think that feature belongs to Sano. So there are things to consider in the future of where stuff is going to be, and kind of single source of truth for certain types that we can depend on, where they are going to be located and stuff like that could be valuable to discuss as well.
Okay.
In my opinion.
Yeah.
Let's see. So who can organize that call? And can I be invited?
Do you want to organize it?
Sounds like that's what I'm doing. Okay, I'll put that on my backlog.
Cool.
But again, it's one of those things that's difficult, right? Because it's not urgent. So we'll see.
Okay, thanks. Anything else from Shielded Labs in the NSM? We have Shielded Labs as well in Crosslink. So I think now that you're there, Nate, you can kick off.
Okay. Okay, this is what I do know about. So yeah, Crosslink, so after we wrapped up the last milestone 3, we looked at milestone 4, and the way 1, 2, 3, and 4 were specified was 1, 2, and 3 were good, nice bite-sized chunks, and then 4 was like, and do everything else, like draw the rest of the owl. So we split that up into smaller chunks that are each roughly, hopefully, like 4 to 6 weeks. And the first one is just focus on quality of life improvements for developers for the previous workshop. So the previous workshop was really rough around the edges, and we basically want to keep the same functionality, but just make it a lot easier to do. So the one feature change we're looking at is the previous workshop. To get onto the BFT roster, we had a special BFT field or message, and now we're moving that into the normal Zcash transaction because part of the design we're working on has kind of an invariant that all changes to the proof of stake state outside of running the actual BFT protocol happen through normal Zcash transactions. So that's the only sort of like feature code change, but ideally to the user's point of view for a workshop, nothing changes except everything should run smoother. So there's a lot of auxiliary changes, like there's a lot of confusion about the config file, so fix that up, improve CI and continuous deployment and stuff like that, so that the next workshop can effectively be a repeat, but hopefully just a lot smoother. So that's the first thing we're biting off. And then the next ones are, so the next milestone after this current one we're working on, which we're calling 4A. 4B, the goal is to sort of couple the roster status to testnet Zec, which is called TAS. So at that point, we'll have to figure out, like, for workshops, are we going to have like a testnet faucet or something? But that will be like the beginning of actually having a proof of stake system. But that the staking and unstaking rules will be as minimal and simple as possible. After that, we have a 4C milestone, which is where we wanted to add more restrictions and rules about when staking can occur, where there's time quantization and amount quantization and unlocking periods and so forth. And we wrote a blog post about that, and we've gotten a ton of feedback. And we've learned a lot of people who like stake don't like lockups, which, yeah, so we've learned that. And now we're trying to incorporate a lot of feedback and figure out, how much do we want to adjust that design to find like a good point on trade-off curves. And so we're going to keep having discussions about that. And again, that milestone where we want to implement those pieces is 2 milestones out. So we will probably start on the software development for it. Let's see, September, October, probably at the end of like November, or I guess December, sort of the black hole month. So maybe January timeframe. But before then, we're going to be having lots of discussions. So that's our status update.
Cool. Any question about? Oh, okay.
Yeah, one other piece is the next workshop. We're trying to figure out the date, but we hope to. So we'll figure out a date and publish that next week. But ideally, it'll be like early October-ish or mid-October.
I try to be there. This is in Discord.
No, we're going to move away from Discord because that did not work well for most participants.
Not sure
I think we're going to do Zoom.
Yeah, we'll probably do it on Zoom.
I tried to be in a workshop in Discord, and I don't know, my microphone just didn't work, and for some reason that I'm still trying to figure out. So Zoom will be, I think, better for me.
Yeah, we learned a lot of like just practical workshop lessons, like don't use Discord, make sure we're in a good co-working space with good networking, stuff like that.
Cool. Any question for Crosslink?
So one comment about the issue that Nate brought up earlier, the issue of duplicated structures in Zebra and Orchard and Libra Zcash for Sapling. So indeed, Zebra re-implements significant parts of the protocol, and this is a pain point. This is a pain point for the project, and we consulted the Zcash Foundation people, and they said that there is a plan to consolidate both implementations. We asked them to wait because doing this now, basically unrolling a year of changes that was done to support ZSA on the current re-implemented Zebra structures, But going forward and long-term vision, this mission is critical, and we fully support this. We said that we fully support this. It's just a matter of picking the right timing, and maybe the right timing is somewhere not too far away from this point in time. So yeah, we're here and we're familiar with this, and we're here also to help. Also, I had a look on the Crosslink fork of Zebra, and this week, and it is massive. The scope of changes is significant. I had a really quick look, and I'm looking forward to see how this develops.
Cool. Yeah, we are kind of in agreement with that to keep the tariffs for now, so we can make the change. The community really wants the shielded assets to be there, so we are prioritizing that, waiting for the factors. Okay, let's move on to open announcement. Is there anything anyone wants to announce? If not, we can move to open discussion. That I know we have the Crosslink tokenomics topic from Jason or Nate.
Yeah, Nate, did you want to mention something first?
Oh yeah, I had an announcement. This it's just kind of a fun thing. If you use X, I posted a bunch of polls about the design space related to Crosslink. But I'm also hoping people from other communities weigh in, because actually I've seen a thread where people are criticizing Ethereum for how it made some of these design trade-offs. Hopefully we'll have some Ethereans too. So if you're interested, go check that out. It's no biggie though. I mean, it's an X poll.
Okay, I'll start off with the tokenomics. So like Nate mentioned last week, we published a blog post on tokenomics. Before we get into the conversation, I just wanted to give a quick overview of the design and rationale behind the features that we chose. So for Crosslink, staking takes place within the Orchard pool. When users stake, they delegate their ZEC to a finalizer of their choice, which makes them eligible to earn rewards. When they decide to unstake, their ZEC is unlocked and it has to go through this 30-day unbonding period before it can be spent again. For security and transparency, the total amount that is staked and delegated are disclosed so that the overall staking levels and the distribution across finalizers can be confirmed and verified. For privacy, Crosslink uses quantization in both time and amount. So staked amounts can only be committed in exponential increments of like 1, 10, 100, 1,000, so on and so forth. And then staking or unstaking can only occur in these fixed 10-day intervals. And the purpose for the batching and the amount quantization is it makes it harder for observers to link staking actions to specific individuals or accounts or infer exact balances. Then there's the 30-day unbonding period, and that serves both security and privacy. For security, it creates a window to detect and address misbehavior before funds are released. And when we were modeling this out, some of the examples we were thinking about were potential attacks like the Ethereum DAO hack, the rollback attacks against Ethereum Classic or Zen, Justin Sun's attack against Steem. And then for privacy, the 30-day unbonding period encourages users to keep a portion of their ZEC liquid in Orchard. It's sort of intentionally inconvenient to help maintain a healthy anonymity set alongside the funds that are staked. So altogether, these features were meant to balance privacy, security, accountability, usability, while creating stronger incentives for long-term holders. However, like Nate said, after hearing feedback from investors about the 30-day unbonding period, it became clear that we overlooked the impact the design would have on attracting new capital, because liquidity is a huge priority for many investors. So I just want to be clear that our design should be viewed as an initial design. We shared it with the goal of gathering feedback and then iterating on it. And we definitely got feedback, but it's by no means a final design that we're rushing towards implementing. Like Nate said, the implementation part happens a couple sub milestones away. But ultimately, like, what gets implemented is up to the community and coin holders, not Shielded Labs. So they'll need to consider the various trade-offs, determine what's acceptable. From my perspective, what's important now is that we need to try to find a balance that allows for liquidity without compromising privacy and security. So I'm hoping that we can use this time for the next 45 minutes to sort of explore that. I'll stop there. Pablo?
Hello.
Yeah. So yeah, that's a valid point. Me, as everyone, I don't like to be locked. Once I made the decision to withdraw, and then I need to wait for a month. It's a lot. It's a lot. I do like the aspect of price stabilization that a lock would have, meaning tokens that cannot be released immediately, prevent the person to act potentially irrationally and do rushed decisions and destabilize the price. If you see that there is a chain with 80% locked coins, so you know this is stable. The price shock will be minimal if something happens. So I like the stabilizing aspect of this. In my personal opinion, 30 days is too much. I like Binance doing 7 days. Maybe it's somewhere in the middle there, but this is a personal opinion.
So you mentioned you did some models. Is that public information? How you did that?
I mean, they were less like actual models. It was more just like discussing risks.
Do you think it will be valuable to have some sort of computer model? Suko?
I have some data about that. I'm trying to get a link I can post. Coinbase Prime has a nice table of all of the different, like 12 or so different coins that Coinbase Prime will stake on behalf of its customers. Okay, I think I posted a link to a spreadsheet. So there are basically two inputs to us coming up with the 30-day unbonding period. And like Jason says, we missed an input, or we generated an input by Cunningham's law by posting the 30-day unbonding period. But there's a really strong signal from a whole bunch of investor types, many of whom are from the Solana ecosystem, which I think is really interesting, which calls itself like the NASDAQ of the internet or whatever. Anyway, but those folks really, really hate the 30-day unbonding period. I think it's egregious. But anyway, before we got that information, we looked up the unstaking and unbonding and epoch periods of all these different coins. And we thought about a few attacks like the ones Jason named. So I have 3 data points from history. One was the DAO hack, which the Ethereum community got together and organized this contentious hard fork, which resulted in Ethereum Classic versus Ethereum. And it took them like 30 days to do it, but that's because the DAO had a 30-day unbonding period baked in when it started. So the attacker couldn't withdraw their coins for 30 days. And this guy from Solana named Mert, who posts a lot on Twitter, made a really good retort to that argument, which was governance processes expand to fill the available time. So if the DAO hacker had had 14 days, then maybe the Ethereum folks would have initiated the hard fork in 14 days. That's a good retort. But then I looked up the Justin Sun tussle over Steam. That was really interesting. I love this history stuff. It turns out when Justin Sun initially announced that he had bought 20% of all the Steam tokens, I'll try not to go into too much detail, but I love history. So there's these 20% of these tokens which were supposed to not be used for governance by like a verbal agreement among the community. Those were only supposed to be used to sell for development funding, those 20%. So Justin Sun bought the company that owned those 20% and said he was going to move Steam to the Tron network. And the rest of the Steam community really didn't like that. And it took them 8 days to initiate a soft fork that froze Justin Sun's coins. So that's another data point. It took 8 days. And they didn't have a particular deadline. And then Justin Sun, I love this stuff. Then he lied to CZ from Binance and a bunch of other exchanges and claimed that they needed to use their customers' Steam coins to do this run-of-the-mill network upgrade. And thus all these exchanges voted in favor of him taking over the whole governance system of Steam. And then the community oh yeah, there's a bunch of tussle, but eventually, a few days later, it was clear that Justin Sun could buy enough tokens to control the Steam governance system. And then it took the rest of the Steam community 14 days to initiate a hard fork that produced a new blockchain where all of the Steam tokens got one-to-one airdrops with the new tokens, except for any Steam tokens that had supported Justin Sun's takeover attempt. So anyway, I've got 3 data points: 30 days for the DAO hard fork, 8 days for the Steam soft fork freeze, and 14 days for the Steam hard fork split. That, and then the spreadsheet I just posted the link to, it's pretty incomplete. I've been asking AIs to explain how the Coinbase data lines up. It's confusing because there's epochs, which are regular intervals, and then some tokens also have a delay in addition to the interval. Do you see what I mean? I was going to say, there's one more. That's all I have.
Go ahead.
Another data point I wanted to raise here. So one shouldn't, well, there's sort of two parts to this, because one shouldn't really think about staked tokens as like, I kind of dislike the framing everyone uses as yield, because the purpose of staking is not to earn money. The purpose of staking is to secure the network. And the yield is payment for a service, really, if we think about it in the same way as mining. However, many people do think about it as essentially investment. And if we look at investment terms, well, if I go and put my money into term deposit, that has a 30-day unbonding period. Like 30-day unbonding periods and things like that are very familiar to wide swaths of people. Who they're probably not familiar to are the very rich investors who don't use those particular investment tools and use other means of preserving their liquidity. So I want to just raise the point that we shouldn't over-index on the views of the very wealthy investors and under-index on the purpose of staking at all, which is securing the network. Like yes, there needs to be some sort of balance there, because you need to have sufficient stake in order for the proof of stake system to be secure. And so you have to be able to incentivize that coming across. And so, yeah, there's a whole network of like trade-offs that have to be balanced in there. But I also don't want us to over-index in the other direction, particularly when you take into account the fact that like some of the things that Zuko was referring to there, a lot of the actions that happen on chain in those are all public. So you could see Justin Sun moving those coins around. In a private staking situation like Zcash, the only thing you can see is the bonding and unbonding portion of it. And so while you get exposure to the visibility on the finalizers and their the movements in their stake, you can't actually tell who, if anyone, is doing that kind of movement. Sybil style attacks are possible here from a many smaller one large staker emulating very many stall stakers, which is the point of the privacy. So a thought that occurred to me when I first put my hand up was perhaps something to consider here is if you explicitly want a shorter staking period, is there some level of privacy that you are required to pay in exchange for that? Is that something we want to consider, or do we want to maintain we want good privacy, and so we need to consider everything within that context? A similar vein would be maybe different unbonding intervals have different amounts of yield that they earn as an equivalent change, and then you get into the bucketing and things to make sure you still get privacy with that. But yeah, that's where my mind's rambling to.
Nate?
Yeah, I like those points, specifically about privacy. So finalizers can leverage the Zcash privacy to perform Sybil attacks. That's true, and so it feels like there might be a trade-off, but I actually believe other systems that don't have good privacy still have this problem. Like so one example of protocol design is some protocols distinguish between stake that a validator is putting up that it owns versus stake that's being delegated from others, but that's totally gameable ultimately. Or they can, Sybil attacks are always possible even when there's no privacy on the internet. Or I should say not good privacy. For that reason, and since privacy is sort of our key value proposition, aside from like other cool stuff like governance and scalability. But anyway, it's the most well-known. It seems like we should just be consistent there. But the other piece that you brought up, Strad, about the purpose of staking, I think is really helpful because like I noticed on the forum, somebody was comparing lockup periods and interest to a bank account. And I thought, I didn't comment yet, but that's a poor comparison because the purpose of a bank's product for consumers is it's on-demand withdrawals, right? But internally, banks are doing this thing where they're trying to match their liabilities and assets, and there's this time range thing that they're trying to do with different bonds and trying to predict when people will withdraw and stuff. So inside the bank, it's using other investment assets, and those have different time horizons. So any investor, like from just a purely financial standpoint, every investment is going to have some time horizon. And so I sort of wonder how much people who are highly specialized in just staking proof of stake networks have had to deal with that in other realms. It's just a reality, and there's a reason for the different time horizons. And for proof of stake, we might have particular reasons. Yeah. That being said, there's one thing I'm still trying to wrap my head around, which is for social slashing, like the Hive example or Ethereum or whatever, there's always the potential to just roll back time. So like an example was the Bitcoin integer overflow bug. When they fixed that, that one wasn't a really easy one because it's unambiguous and everyone wants the same thing. But they rolled back a bunch of blocks by just saying, it's obvious that starting at this block, things weren't right. So we're just going to reset. And I'm wondering if that's still true in Zcash, even with privacy or not. Because if it's still true, then it feels like there's less of a need for lockups because part of the rationale for lockups is to ensure somebody who's done something obviously malicious can't escape through the shielded pool. But if you can just if the community can decide to roll back time, then couldn't they roll back, hard fork, like nuke the bad guys' funds, even though there's the shielded pool? Any thoughts on that?
Tuco?
Real quick, I have a thought on that, which is it could have major collateral damage to some innocent third party who had nothing to do with anything, and suddenly they have all their money destroyed by that. But the main thing I was going to say was that there's, I think, 5 trade-offs, and I intend to document these, but they're simple. It's privacy, network security, investor appeal, long-term versus short-term is a trade-off, separate from the other 3. And then time to market and rapid iteration is the 5th one. And I conceive of our role at Shielded Labs as not pushing so hard in any one of these 5 directions, except for time to market. I'll get to that. But mostly trying to engineer Pareto improvements where we can get like more security without giving up very much privacy and investor appeal and stuff like that. But I do want us to lean hard on time to market, because I believe we can improve all of the other ones by iterating better. But anyway, that's the 5 trade-offs. It's not up to us, it's up to the Zcash community at large. Security, like network security, privacy for stakers, long-term versus short-term holders, investor appeal, which we accidentally omitted from our first proposal. Like I sort of forgot about external investors being interested, and time to market and rapid iteration. Those are the 5.
Dave?
Yeah, one thing on that, we're working on like a follow-up blog piece or post that sort of dives into our rationale for the design and also explores those various trade-offs. So hopefully we can have something like that out in the next week or so. But I wanted to respond to something that Strad said. So I agree that we shouldn't over-index on the opinions of wealthy investors, but I don't want to subject retail or institutional investors to an unnecessarily long unbonding period. So I guess a question that I have is, what can we do to try and determine the optimal unbonding period, given the security risks that might arise, and like, you know, what we need to do to mobilize a response to that threat? Like 30 days is a conservative estimate, and it's a bit of a guess on our part.
Yeah, the kinds of things that I would want to, if I had the time to spend on this, which I do not, but Shielded Labs does, the kinds of things that I would be thinking about here are things like, you know, how, what is our detection like for, what are the detection processes for malfeasance? What are the bottlenecks in the governance process, but also the technical deployment process for making changes in response to malfeasance? What are the mechanisms and things so not just from a like how, you know, technically how does, you know, slashing versus not slashing, whatever, handle that, which is also another part of it, but like if something goes wrong and we have to use the brakes, can we actually do a social slash in 7 days? Or is that going to burn out every single one of the engineers here? Hi, I'm someone who regularly gets close to / over burnout as a result of my decade at Zcash. I don't want to be the person who has to be one of those people trying to rush to get something done in 7 days, which wouldn't actually be 7 days because it will take some amount of time to detect that there's a problem. So we'll probably only have 3 or 4 days if it's a 7-day period. Like there's a bunch of stuff that if you're aware of where those constraints are, you can plan for them, and make sure that the joints that are necessary to exercise are well greased, And so that, and it's, you know, one of the examples of that is the fact that we've tried to keep doing regular network upgrades to keep it in the front minds of people that, hey, this is a thing we do. It keeps the process working. And we would need similar kinds of things around the entire rest of the ecosystem to be agile enough to correctly respond on that kind of timeline. Given, and to that, you then have to factor in, you know, what engineering resources, what engineering time, constraints, and other things we have available, or rather are likely to have available if and when this occurs. You know, what is the incident response process for the proof of stake protocol?
That's a very good point.
Mm-hmm.
Matt, go ahead.
You're muted.
There we go. Is that better?
Mhm.
Okay. The other part about the unbonding period and the epoch lengths is that they introduce friction to people who want to stake, and that may be a good thing because it keeps coins in the shielded pool. So some of the trade-offs are sort of at direct odds with each other too when we talk about appealing to people who want fast liquidity versus maintaining the, you know, the core of Zcash, the privacy of the shielded pool, the anonymity set. And to Strad's point, I wonder what the actual balance would be, or what the size of Orchard, you know, what is the threshold when anonymity starts to become degraded because people are staking? And, you know, modeling that out would be useful too. Just a random thought.
Go ahead, Sunko.
Good conversation. So I really like Strad's point. That's an example of the kind of thing that I think Shielded Labs can do to improve the Pareto improvements, or improve the trade-off curve among these things. However, something Jason said made me realize my earlier list of desirable goals that we're trading off with each other, it was totally wrong. I said security, privacy, appeal to investors, long-term and time to market. And that's totally wrong. That appeal to investors one, no. Like, security appeals to investors, right? And privacy appeals to investors. The better the privacy, the more likely more investors are going to invest in Zcash in the future. And Jason pointed out that, like, people who are not professional investors, but they're just Zcash users and they have some stake, and then they want to unbond their stake, this impacts them a lot. It's usability, right? So I'm going to recast it: security, privacy, long-termism, and then this one is like usability / liquidity, something like that. And then the last one is time to market. But it's cool that they do have these trade-offs. Like, okay, one more thing. Like Mark said, there's a really 180-degree trade-off between privacy and quick liquidity. Like, basically, if you can use your staked ZEC on demand, like as soon as you want to, then you're losing privacy. That's pretty much 100%. But all the other trade-offs, I think, tend to actually potentially reinforce each other in some ways, as well as whatever. I'll be quiet. Good idea, Chris.
Hey.
Yeah, so let's see. I'm thinking about the incident response, and my mind went in a few directions. One is we need good monitoring and good technical support and good community and governance around how to respond to incidents more generally, even if you know, there could be a wide range of incidents, from something that's like a security compromise that is super time sensitive and acute, and that might need like a war room team of devs and people working on it. But then there might be, you know, there's like a situation like the dusting attack, where it is urgent, but it doesn't necessarily require like a turnaround time of a couple of days of changes decided by a war room of developers. It might need like a wider scope of participation in deciding what to do and a little bit more timeline and planning and how to address it well. And then we can, I can imagine a spectrum. So maybe there's something like, let's say we deploy a version of Crosslink, and there's a tension between orchard metrics that people like, or metrics we use as proxies for privacy versus how much staking there is or how popular staking is. If there's a contention there, and we feel like it's okay, and then we release something, but then we see in practice the metrics are going away that makes people uncomfortable, then that might be an even longer time range thing. So one thing in my mind that I'm thinking of whenever I'm thinking of time to market is I want to also see if we can have a relatively tight schedule of follow-up changes, because I kind of feel like for a lot of these things where there's a parameter and trade-offs and we're guessing something based on discussions, it's very likely that in real life, the situation might change, or we might learn and we might want to change them in the future. So it would be good if we already have the intention and capacity to do that on a normal timeline, so that it's not emergency mode. And this is bleeding into the other thread that Jason's been spearheading about trying to accelerate network upgrades. And so I don't, that's a huge topic, but I feel like incident response really comes all the way into can we do faster network upgrades in that spectrum? And the one piece so far in my mind for Crosslink is I'm hoping we can be able to disrupt Crosslink specific use cases more easily versus something like hardware wallet support, which has a really slow turnaround time. So disruptions might be costly or more costly. I'm hoping we can sort of set a precedent and do things technically so that it's easier to disrupt, say, finalizer operators or the wallets that do delegation, and they're expecting it and they're used to it. And so we can make those changes more rapidly than general changes. But that's my only thought there so far.
I have a question, but Suko, you have your hand raised. So
Okay, real quick. Improving privacy and security as well as improving liquidity. I think all of those attract investors. And then I was thinking, in response to something Strad said earlier, attracting investors, I'll bet, improves privacy and security by having more usage and more users and stuff. That's all.
So the Crosslink design has a stall mode, which is an emergency mode. I was wondering if we kind of need to synchronize it with this, or if it can help us to incident report, something like that. I'm very into the details, but maybe some of you know.
Yeah, stall mode. So just to clarify for anyone who hasn't heard about this, so that's a name. with names, they're always shifting, and we have way too many variations of emergency mode. But stall mode is this idea that if the BFT hasn't made progress for long enough, then the proof of work consensus rules enter a state called stall mode, which is that only Coinbases are allowed. And the thinking is, the motivation is if proof of work is making progress, but finality is stalled, and there's no stall mode, and proof of work just continues indefinitely, and then later finality suddenly catches up, then there's going to be two sets of users, the ones who are relying on proof of work to make their economic decisions and the ones who are waiting for finality. And those two sets will disagree on the resolution because they've drifted too far apart. So that's the rationale for having stall mode. And then the design, the goal of having Coinbase only is hopefully miners will want to keep mining on the assumption that things will be improved, and then they'll, you know, those coins will be worth it to them. So that's the basic design. But it does seem like it's related to this concept of lockups or forks, like community forks or whatever. Generally, it's this case where, you know, protocol designers try to figure out things that could go wrong, and then they might try to bolster the design to protect against those things. But I'm growing more and more kind of skeptical of that. So for example, what if there were no stall mode, but we knew we had a community process and an emergency upgrade process or something, and we knew we could do something within like a week? Then in that case, should we not have a stall mode? And then if BFT stalls, we just use that process? Because then we have more discretion, we might know more about the context. But on the other side of the fence, if there's less discretion and a pre-baked rule, then people can predict what will happen without coordinating, and so that can have advantages. So it's a tricky choice in general.
Maybe good to have Dharma to talk about that maybe in the next Arborist call.
Yeah, she's like the originator of that concept, and convinced me that it was a good idea.
Okay, cool. Thank you, Nate. Anyone else want to talk about this?
Yeah, I think the only other thing I'd bring up on
Okay.
here is I think I tend to agree with the sentiment that's been expressed around, you know, privacy it can be attractive, you know, when it is possible to do the thing, and the clearest evidence we have for that is the significant increase in the orchard pool over the last year, and shielding in general. Now that people who are technically unable to keep their funds shielded are now able to do so, and so I do see the argument that people who wish to stake but are technically unable to do so with privacy would be able to you know, would be incentivized in that sense. Yeah, as always, it comes down to the actual implementation details of you know, which is the fun thing to get to discuss.
Anything else?
I finished my table of unbonding periods in that Google Sheets link I posted earlier, so go check it out.
Cool. I'm trying to make it is okay if we kind of link to that in the YouTube channel.
Yeah, I think so. Right, Zico?
Yeah, you can. It's a publicly visible link. You can have it. You can share it.
Okay, cool. Thanks. Okay, I think that's pretty much it. See you in
I have
2 weeks. Okay,
I have
go ahead.
a parting
We have
thought.
a few minutes left.
So we want good time to market, but we already know there are some designs that could be really appealing in terms of reducing the contention between amount of stake and privacy. For example, Penumbra is high on my list to re-examine. So in my mind, the main reason we would not just adopt something like that wholesale is just time to market. So basically my favorite strategy, unless there's like something about that design that we decide makes trade-offs differently than we want. But my favorite strategy is ship something that's you know, like kind of good enough, but has known flaws that doesn't make everyone happy, but then see if we can follow up with an improvement that makes the trade-offs in a better way. And I'm just curious for everyone here if that approach seems like a good idea versus taking longer to launch a more sophisticated thing, which I'm fairly biased against because I'm worried about scope creep and getting bogged down and stuff like that. So I see likes versus better, like the username. Anyone else? I'm
You're
curious what
surprised, but I
the,
totally agree.
yeah,
I think
I'm curious
if you wait to make the better thing, then sometimes the market has moved on. Like another competitor is eating your lunch, and it doesn't matter how good your thing is.
yeah,
Yeah, that's true. In the other hand, it's a difficult protocol, and there are a lot of details that needs to be considered. But I guess we'll never cover everything, so good enough is better than nothing. Okay, great. Okay, I'll see you in 2 weeks. The next one is October the 2nd in the later time. To be there, and have a good day, good evening, whatever you are.
Thank you for organizing, Alfredo.
Thanks.
yeah,
Bye-bye.
Thanks,
thanks.
everyone.
Everybody.